Hello, Lisa here. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if this is your first time coming by. Today we're going to be doing Cards and Conversation. Cards and Conversation is a new series here on the channel where I grab a deck from my collection and shuffle and draw 2 tarot cards, and then we read them in combination. Like, how would I read those two cards specifically to answer a question or to solve a problem? And that is what we're going to be doing today. So I have pulled out the Cracked Amethyst Tarot. I'm going to shuffle and get ready to go. In the meantime, if you didn't already know, I am also an author and a deck creator, and I will throw a graphic up on the screen so you can check out my work if you are so inclined. But with that said, let's jump into it. So the goal with this series is to all of us have a chance to sort of talk through and get to know what it's like to read cards in combo, because it is very much one thing to learn how to read tarot cards individually, because you understand this card is kind of represents this energy or that situation, and this other card represents this energy and this other situation kind of thing. It's very different to put them together. And so the goal with this is just to kind of talk through how I might read a combination of cards, both not only with like sort of my rote understanding of what the card means, but also pulling from what that specific deck seems to be saying to me in the moment, or what I'm getting from the imagery. So that is what we're doing today with the Cracked Amethyst Tarot. I may pull in some stuff from the guidebook and all that good stuff. So let's see what we got. Let me give this a couple of other shuffles, and then I'm going to pull 2 cards. What is our combo today? All right, we have the Hermit and the 10 of Cups. Super cool. Okay, so just to set the tone, and I'm going to zoom us in because we're going to be looking at just 2 cards for like the whole entirety of the video. Okay, so let's take a quick look at the guidebook and see what the creator intends for these 2 images and go from there. Now, this is a very interesting layout guidebook that I actually really like, so let's take a peek at it together. So first of all, for the Hermit, it says introspection, solitude, and perspective. So it's sort of pointing to the cave as a place to get a clear viewpoint, retreat, taking space and time away to think, time to breathe and think and contemplate, and far away. So that's sort of how the guidebook is illustrated for the Hermit. And then for the 10 of Cups, we have this like overflowing plant and then this little baby like plant. And it says fulfilled, peaceful, and family. And it's love, joy, growth, family, connection, happiness, contentment, wholeness, abundance. I almost said abandonment, abundance, and care. So we have this sort of emotional abundance in the 10 of Cups coming after the solitude and time alone spent for the Hermit. So let's look at this a couple of ways. Number one, I'm going to look at the order of the cards and we will flip it and see how we might read it differently if it was the other way around. So I'll tell you my initial impressions. What I'm seeing, I almost always read in a sort of trajectory. In other words, I read sort of from left to right like I would read a book. So when I see the Hermit followed by the 10 of Cups, to me that tells me that all of this emotional abundance, all of this found family or a strong relationship connection, a group of relationships around you, a sense of being a part of a whole that feels very nourishing and very healthy. And also the 10 of Cups for me is an energy of like it says in there, emotional abundance, but also this like bliss, like this very, very happy, connected feeling. But it's so interesting to see that following the Hermit. And so where I'm thinking is that all of the introspective work, all of the self-development, all of the personal growth, the effort that was put in going into the cave, seeking to understand self, has actually prepared whoever I'm reading for or myself for this emotional abundance. Without that time spent alone, without that time spent in solitude, without that time spent on personal growth, reflection, wisdom seeking, they would not have been able to form these strong bonds. So if I saw this in combination for somebody sitting across the table from me, I would literally speak to them like, it looks like you've been doing the work. Like you've been doing the work and you're seeing the results pay off or begin to pay off in the relationships you have around you. We often go through periods in our lives where we form relationships just to have relationships, where we perhaps make friends and build bonds because we just don't want to be alone. And we haven't actually done the work to figure out sort of what our standard is for relationships in our life, like what we actually want around us, what kind of relationship we want to have. That comes as a result of personal growth work, introspective work, learning about ourselves, doing the self-worth stuff, figuring out what we bring to a relationship and also what we expect in return from a relationship, that's cultivated over a long period of time. And here we see that that wisdom work, that development work leads to this beautiful outcome. So if the person I'm reading for is in a space of loneliness or feeling like they're just not making the right connections, this tells me that yes, but you're doing the work and this is going to lead to this if you just stick with the process. If you just stay with this learning about yourself and lighting your own path, you're going to find your way to something that is so fulfilling emotionally, but one comes before the other. There's this groundwork that needs to be laid. So that's kind of how I would approach that in a general sense. And I'm going to assume that in this particular case, there's no specific question, but this is kind of how I'd read this energy. Somebody sits down and they're like, what do I need to know? Well, looks like maybe you're going through a period where maybe you sometimes feel isolated and maybe sometimes you feel like there's just nobody around you, but remember, quality over quantity is going to be an important value. And right now in this time where you might feel a little bit isolated, you're doing this rich, important work of planting seeds that will grow in the future. So this feels very much like the seed planting in the depth of the earth with this dark color. And then all this green and vibrance is going to bear out in the future. What I really especially love about this is this giant, like, big plant, and they've obviously been taking some cuttings from it and starting to grow even new plants. So it has this like domino ripple effect of joy in their future. So again, I'm just riffing, but this is how I do when I'm reading in combination. When you take isolation and that leads to emotional abundance, that's how I get there. So if I'm reading these in combination, that's kind of what I get. Again, just not getting in my own way and sharing the first thing that pops into my mind. So let's say there was a specific question in this combination. And so somebody had said, how can I'm trying to make progress on my job. Like I really want, or in my career. And I'm trying to see, I just want to know, like, am I doing the right things? Like, am I headed in the right direction? And I would say, okay, well, right now you're in a period of needing to sort of maybe gather information, go through a period of learning, of study. Maybe it doesn't feel like you're making much momentum because you're really having to like go deep rather than go forward. So I would say this is not a time for lateral movement or even upward movement for you. It's a time of like really digging into where you're at and being the best you can be at that, gaining the lessons you can. That will bear fruit in more emotional fulfillment in your work in the future. Maybe you'll have more confidence because you did all of that established work to get there. But there's going to be this like growth in the future, and there's going to be this return on investment, so to speak. But from an emotional perspective, you're going to feel more fulfilled in your work or in your career. So the time you spend now, even when it doesn't feel like you're going anywhere, is going to bear out in the future again. So we see this very upward lift trajectory either way. So let's flip it. Now, neither one of these cards is negative. So we're not going to suddenly get like, I think, a negative answer here because these are both just, I would say the Hermit feels very neutral. 10 of Cups is very positive. So when we're going from neutral to positive, that's a very simple and clear trajectory. We know what we're talking about in that sense, right? When we're going from the 10 of Cups, this place of like emotional, everything seems so good and we've got all these great connections and we've got all this great family. And then we go to this place of like aloneness, seeking of self, wisdom seeking, learning, growing, nurturing, going within. It's so interesting because this has this feeling of almost crowdedness now. Like there's just lots of relationships, there's lots of emotional nurturing around you, and that's great. But maybe you're so focused on your relationships, you're so focused on like tending to this family that you have, or this chosen family that you have, that you're not taking enough time to really go within and tend to the needs of the self and do the growth that you need to do. Sometimes when things are too good, and this sounds really weird, when things are too good in our emotional world, like in our relational world, there's not an impetus to do that deeper work. It's like, well, I'm getting along with everybody. I've got great friendships. Like my marriage is great. Like all these things are great. I guess I don't need to do the work. And the Hermit, after this place of emotional fulfillment, is like, yeah, everything's great, but you still have to do the work. Like you still need to cultivate your relationship with yourself. This may not always look like this. And in fact, one of the things I talk about with the 10 of Cups a lot is that the 10 of Cups is not sustainable at all times. We're not going to always feel like we're in this place of emotional like perfection and bliss in our relationships. There's going to be ups and downs. If you cultivate a strong relationship with self alongside your relationship with other people, then you're more resilient and able to handle those ups and downs. And also you're not going to hold other people to impossible standards, because instead of trying to expect it to always look and feel like this, you recognize that it's just as important. Like when maybe one of your closest family members, the person you spend the most time with, maybe that person is going through a rough time and they can't be so engaging to you right now. And so you cultivate this relationship with self so that you can move through that period of time and it doesn't have to negatively impact your relationship. And again, I'm just riffing. This is just me and this is how I read, is just like kind of talking through or verbally processing what I see on the table. So it could be that. I don't see this meaning like you're going from having lots of like friends to nobody, but you might be going into a quiet period of time socially. Sure. You might be going from a period of feeling like maybe, like I could see this, say, for example, right around the beginning of January, right? So many of us in December, our lives get so busy. We're doing all these holiday things. We're seeing family we haven't seen all year or friends we haven't connected with in a long time. We're talking to people. We're hearing from people. We're making connections. And then after the holidays, it's like we all go into this like post-holiday lull where none of, like, even the most extroverted of extroverts are like, okay, I'm ready to not people for a minute. At least I think you guys go through that. I'm not an extrovert, so I don't know. But I feel like there's a period where we all are like, let's all just be like little like cave mice in our own little hovels and not go socialize. So there is like, it could literally be practical like that. So again, let's take that same career question. Someone wants to know where their career is going. And I see this. It's like, okay, I feel like you're like, this could literally be a move from, say, being a very gregarious field sales rep, for example, out in the field working with clients, to doing work that is more, say, office centric, where maybe you're moving to a work from home scenario where you were used to being surrounded by the hubbub at the office. And now that everybody's working from home, the entire work culture has shifted. And maybe you realized that the thing that made you so happy at work and so fulfilled was that connection with other people and that kind of like buzz in the office. And you miss that now. And so you're having to adjust to a new reality that is so much less social. So that might affect how you view the path that you're currently on. But that doesn't necessarily speak to the work itself. And these cards don't, I feel like, necessarily take me in that direction. So again, I'm just verbally processing the first things that are, wow, my auto white balance is like, as soon as my hands are out, it's like, this is so dark. But anyway, it's such an interesting shift even in color from the vibrancy and the life and the yellow here to all these like deep, dark, like blacks and dark grays and really deep purples. It's such a shift energetically from busy and thriving and growing to like quiet and reflective and peaceful, no doubt, but it's a big shift. So we see the shift from big and connecting to quiet and more alone or more peaceful or more quiet. I'm repeating quiet, but you get the vibe, right? There's just a shift and we can feel that shift. So to me, this feels so much different than this, right? Because they feel like they're taking us in obviously they're taking us in two completely different directions. It's one of the reasons why when I read cards in combo, I almost always will take that sort of thing into account. If I'm reading with fixed positions, of course, that's different because I'm going to be taking this in its position, this in its position. But when I'm reading just cards on the table, which is how I do a lot of my reading, actually, I'll just lay out some cards and it kind of tells me, it shows me a timeline. And that timeline might be, this might be where we're at in the present, and this might be what we went through just before. Or this might be our present, and this is what's kind of coming up or where we're headed right now. And so that's kind of, I mean, if you think of two card combo as being somewhere in a 3-card past, present, future, that gives you an idea of sort of how to read a pair if you're just like going to answer a question for somebody with 2 cards. If you're watching this series, here's what I would suggest. Practice this. Pull cards in combination. Just take any random deck from your collection. You can spin a wheel for it, roll for it. Just, I don't know, cover your eyes and randomly touch one on your shelf. And then pull it out and pull 2 cards and do this exercise. And do this with tarot. I mean, I think Oracle is not, it's not like it's not worth doing, but I think that this is specific to like, let me see if I can reword that. Grab any tarot deck. Oh, this might be a very valuable exercise. Let me start that again. This might be a really valuable exercise to do with Oracle, but for the sake of the conversation here and keeping it clean, I'll just say, do this with tarot because it will teach you how to look at a card in different ways depending on what's around it. And this is like a muscle that the more you work it, the easier this will be. And then eventually you can build into bigger and bigger combinations. You can start to lay out, my favorite spread, honestly, is to lay out 6 cards. One of my favorites when I have the time, is to lay out 6 cards. Let me just zoom us back out a bit. Okay, and I'll scooch. So I'll lay them on the table to answer any question, okay? Just like this. Because this gives me so much flexibility. I have the trajectory of sort of like past, present, future. I also have above, below. So this could be conscious, subconscious. This could be like sort of external, internal. And I can do all of that intuitively. I can also look at how things are connected diagonally. And I know some people like to read in other bigger grids too, like 9 grids and whatnot, but I find this 6 to be such a really cool thing. So what I would challenge you to do is practice reading in combination, practice, see how this whole thing changed, see how this reading feels if you were to see this as conscious, subconscious, past, present, future, and these as kind of pairings. If this is your past, conscious and subconscious, right? That changes the flavor. We're doing all this introspective work, for example, but the 7 of Cups underneath that in the subconscious tells us that maybe we're also being a lot of like really distracted. Our work is not focused. We're trying to learn, we're trying to grow, we're trying to introspect, but we're maybe trying to work on too many things at once, and therefore we're not getting anywhere. We're spinning our wheels. Same thing here. We have the 10 of Cups sitting at top of the 6 of Arrows. This to me, I think the arrows are wands. I'm going to double check because I feel like they are. Yeah, those are the... Yeah, these are the ones. That's what I thought. I was like, it's like success with hitting the bullseye and everything. So we have this 10 of Cups, and success tells me that in the present, we're mostly like, oh my gosh, everything's like coming up roses because our emotional world is good, but we're maybe not seeing where we need to do more work here. And then in the future, we have the 2 of Cups. Again, we have that emotional connection, but in the subconscious, we have the King of Arrows. There's a lot of heat, a lot of passion. That could mean that there's sometimes conflict, but there is still balance in that connection. So I can like just kind of riff. I can just go. And it's kind of crazy how much information you can get by just doing that kind of thing. But again, we start in this series by just going with 2 card combos because it will stretch that muscle and make it easier for you to start combining things. And much like working with or learning a system like Lenormand, when you start to learn how to read cards together as like a combined energy or a flow, it just makes reading so much easier, and it will build confidence with how you read. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. Please do comment, engage, subscribe, hype. I don't know what that does, but I think it does something cool. So can you hype it? And if you do hype it, will you tell me what it does? Because I would love to know. All the things are really helpful because I am working with this series, which is Cards in Conversation, and my other new series, Deck Roulette. I'm trying to sort of retrain the algorithm a little bit in our little tarot tube sphere so that we can kind of train it, that we want to see more practice related videos, more educational type content. We want to see things other than just like hauls, which like for reals, I love a good haul. I will never probably stop ever doing hauls, but I also like to play with what I have, and I like to see that stuff in my feed too. So I try to engage with it when I do see it, but please do the same. Help us teach the algorithm that we like this stuff. Thank you for hanging out. As always, an extra big thank you goes out to my Unicorn Fam channel members. Thank you so much for your tangible support. It really makes such a difference and is why I do so many of the things I do. So thank you, thank you. For everybody watching, I appreciate you being here and participating and watching. Even if you just are like watching it on your TV while you fold your laundry, which is like literally how I do. Who am I kidding? I don't fold my laundry. But like, okay, even if I'm just like listening while I'm being productive in some way, which I do a lot, all of that is engagement. And I appreciate you all so much for just being here and present and hanging out with me because that's what makes this fun. So thank you so much. And until next time, may your magic always shine from the inside out. Bye.